Got some really huge news here. Some really crazy stuff is actually going down. So what's actually happening right now is the poll numbers are actually being flooded by the same pollsters that were complete garbage, right-wing pollsters that came in at the end of 2022, flooded the numbers that ended up causing a bunch of races, like whether it be Whitmer's race or whoever, to be 5 points below what ended up actually happening. Like, for example, in the state of Arizona, Mark Kelly was up by only 1.5 in the aggregate on election day, but he won by over 5 points. And it's because there was this flood of these trash, low tier pollsters that are Republican pollsters into the market. So I already did a video on this, but there's another wave that's coming. There's another huge wave that's happening. And so it's really important to be aware of this because the numbers are actually going down for Kamala Harris in a lot of these aggregates, especially in these states. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at the new polls that have actually dropped here. So you can see these polls added September 5th, 2024. You have this Emerson College poll, and then you have this McLaughlin and Associates poll. These are dropping. You can see it's partisan sponsor for the Republican Party as the sponsor. The pollster itself is also right-wing. I think it has ties to like Newsmax or something like that. But it is a heavily, heavily right-wing pollster, straight-up right-wing pollster. They are flooding the market with these polls, a bunch of approval polls for both of them you can see. And then we have these other polls, these outward intelligence polls. They don't really have a paper trail, I think. Emerson College Morning Consult. And then you can see again Patriot Polling. So Patriot Polling is another one that has actually dropped these polls that has come out. So if you look at these Patriot Polling polls that had come out, they're pretty interesting if you take a look at some of these Patriot polls that dropped. So for these polls, you can see here it's NA right here. And then that's +2 in the national numbers. And then what we also have is we have this Patriot Polling numbers coming out for all these swing states. So these swing states are all like really pretty bad for Kamala Harris according to these numbers. Has Arizona Trump +2, Georgia Trump +1, North Carolina Trump +2, Pennsylvania Trump +1, Nevada's a tie, Wisconsin's a tie, Michigan is a tie. So these are all heavily skewed in favor of Trump in this scenario. You can add pretty much one or two to every single poll here. These are probably like the worst sort of like set of polls that have dropped for Kamala Harris in quite a while. And so what we can see here is the Patriot Polling is just flooding the market. And what's actually happening is there's some states like Pennsylvania, for example, where we can see a really, really strong like number of polls where it's really skewing the numbers and skewing the average. So, for example, if we take a look at the Pennsylvania numbers, what we can see is stuff is going down pretty heavily. So here what we have is it's the lead is now down to 0.7, right? The lead used to be much higher. It was all the way up at like 1.8. And I think at one point it was in the twos. Now it's all the way down to just 0.7. But check this out. Look at all the recent polling, right? So you have Patriot Polling dropping with Trump +1 in this scenario. That's the most recent poll. That's the one that we saw there. And then you have the Z to A research has them even. CNN SRS, which is a decent poll. And then you have this Trafalgar pollster, which is obviously a right-wing pollster, having Trump +2. Then we have Wick, which is also the previous polls, even in +1. And then if you scroll down here, Morning Consult is like a Democrat-leaning pollster. Redfield is trash. Emerson College is like, in the middle. And then you have Fabrizio Ward. I believe this is the Fabrizio that's being employed by Donald Trump as their like pollster in-house. And then Spry Strategies, also another right-wing pollster, also that I believe has ties to potentially Wick as well. SoCal Strategies, another right-wing pollster. Fabrizio, again. Spry, again. Insider Advantage, another right-wing pollster. Almost every single one of these polls, bar a few in between, are all these really trash right-wing pollsters. It's almost unfathomable. And so this is heavily skewing the average. And so this is going to push even more. Like Nate Silver, for example, his modeling is heavily, I think, 60% in favor of Trump right now. And it's largely because of the way that the Rust Belt polls are looking. But when you take a look at the aggregate, a bunch of these polls are all coming in from these trash tier garbage pollsters like SoCal Strategies. And we can even look here. Here's like a ranking of how bad the pollsters actually were back in 2022. We could take a look at these polls and notice we see a lot of familiar faces. And if they're not familiar faces, a lot of them are actually sort of offshoots or sort of like, they busted a nut and like the seed, like the sperm was that. You know what I mean? So here you have Patriot Polling. This is the one we were talking about earlier that has all these numbers that don't look good for Kamala Harris, that look bad for Kamala Harris. That's them. One of the worst pollsters there. 5.5 average error is 7th from the bottom. Wick is even worse. They've been flooding the polls. 5.7. And these pollsters don't even have like a lot of polls in there, 7 and 9. Like you can see Insider Advantage had 29. So a presumable defense, if you have more polls, could be, hey, we had more district level polling, which is historically less accurate than generic ballot polling. So hey, that brought our average down. They don't even have that because it's 9 and 7. So Wick is here, Patriot Polling is here, Insider Advantage also dropping a lot of polls. Trafalgar is another one that's also dropping a lot of polls. So 4 of them here are dropping a lot of polls that are randomly flooding into the market now. Spry Strategies, I believe, also has some ties to Wick as well. And then there was also the McLaughlin one, which is not here. But McLaughlin is actually another pollster that is also a crazy pollster as well. So there's like 5 or 6 different Republican conservative pollsters, trash tier pollsters, who did a horrible job in 2022, who are flooding the market. And you can see the massive impact they're having. Look at how close it's getting now in Pennsylvania. But when you really analyze the polls, the vast majority of these are all being flooded by a bunch of right-wing pollsters. And so the same thing is happening. We can also take a look at Michigan, for example, as well. We can see the Michigan numbers are also, dropping. So here's like 2.6, 3.0 just like a couple weeks ago. Now it's all the way down to 2. But if we see who's dropping the polls, again, Patriot Polling, again, right? Trafalgar Group, again, right? Fabrizio, again, right? So they're lowering the numbers in basically all of these states. In all of these states, it looks like they're really trying to target PA too, because a lot of them are dropping these numbers. But you have this one also, Wisconsin, Spry Strategy. This is crazy. Spry, Fabrizio, Spry, Qantas, right? Qantas, another one that's like, they're out there, retweeting a bunch of Elon Musk stuff, running cover for Trump, etc. They're the ones, like, it almost feels like a majority of these polls are these guys. Trafalgar is there, Patriot Polling is there, Fabrizio, Spry, Qantas, like, they're legitimately severely impacting these numbers. And so the number has gone down for Wisconsin as well, almost from 4 all the way down to 3. And so, and then, the other states like Arizona too, they seem to be flooding the market in these ones too. You have these Spry Strategies polls, you have Insider Advantage Patriot polls. So again, like, that's like, in terms of the numbers of pollsters, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you have almost half of them are the trash pollsters. So almost 50% of this, before I click the show more polls button, almost half of the pollsters that are here are dog shit Republican pollsters who are biased, who are trash from 2022. Think of how massive that is. So the flooding is happening right now, and I think they're probably doing this on purpose right now because obviously there's been some coverage in the media of how Kamala Harris is going, turning blue and everything. And you can see this again with Georgia. Patriot Polling, Insider Advantage, Spry Strategies, that's 3 again out of 7. And Redfield sucks ass too. They're the only ones with Trump down up 2. Patriot Polling has Trump up 1. You can see a massive sea of blue. Even Georgia, though, they're barely able to move it because here the Spry has it even and then +1 for Trump. So Georgia is, I guess, so blue that it's hard for them to even be able to move this state. But think about that, man. Almost half of the pollsters that we have, like in the past couple weeks, are these trash pollsters that are coming from this time frame. And so it's pretty crazy to kind of see what's going on with these. And there's, we could take a look at more of these polls by just looking at all polls and just seeing it, because I think that really gives you like a really great view as well. You can see McLaughlin, right? McLaughlin, Patriot Polling, a bunch of Patriot Polling dropping in all of these states to skew the numbers. You have Signal, Emerson College, and McLaughlin again. ActiveVote is kind of trash pollster. Signal coming out. Emerson, Data for Progress, etc. Those ones obviously not being like that. So what we can see here is, it's a bunch of these sort of favorability polls that are dropping. ActiveVote, SoCal Strategies, Insider Advantage, ActiveVote, Insider Advantage. So there's a big spam going on. All those YouGov polls are basically the same thing, just with different people. So it makes it look like more, but there's a spam going on right now of these pollsters coming out. So be careful in terms of this. Obviously, it's going to impact the media narrative as well. It already has. And even Nate Silver is really taking this heavily into account, because Nate Silver now has a Trump almost at a 60% win margin. I think he has him at 60%, which is absolutely huge. And so they're doing this on purpose, obviously, to try to do this. I don't know what the strategy here is. The impact of this obviously is going to impact the media coverage. One way this could impact things is you could have a situation where maybe you have Democrats who think that you're down more, and so they're more motivated to come out to vote. That appears to be one theorem, sort of the overperformance theorem or the lack of overconfidence theorem. Want to avoid a 2016 Hillary type of situation. Obviously, the other one is if they report that Trump is doing well, it's going to kind of impact the forecast of how well Trump is going to do. In economics at least, people, the economy, how well it does, heavily depends on how people think it's going to do or how it is. So if people think Trump is going to win, it's going to be helpful for Trump, presumably. So it'll be interesting. Should the Dems counter with their own trash pollsters? Even the D-leaning pollsters are not like, they have some dignity and respect. Like PPP is not just like a trash pollster the way that Trafalgar and the others are. So it's going to be kind of tough. But should the Democrats create those kinds of polls? The other thing is, if they do, you might fall into the trap of actually believing your own polls. So that's a potential downside of doing that. But yeah, pretty crazy stuff. It's skewing the entire like system and all the polls right now, and so I thought I'd warn you guys. So keep your third eye open, because it's to the point where almost half of the swing state recent pollsters, like 3 out of 7, will literally be trash polls from 2022, which is unfathomable. Unfathomable.